Welcome in, Hokies fans, to this edition of the Tech Sideline podcast. We record on Monday, November 14th, as we look back at Virginia Tech's 24-7 loss at Duke over the weekend. On episode 271 of the Tech Sideline podcast, we'll discuss how the Hokies came up short despite taking an early lead, talk about this week's ACC Power Rankings, and of course, talk a little basketball, as the Hoops team is off to a hot 3-0 start. All that and more coming up on episode 271 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. We welcome you in whether you are listening or watching on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe while you're there, and also turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future podcasts. Want to let you know that this edition of the Tech Sideline podcast is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference in your overall experience. First Bank and Trust Company is the bank that puts you first. Visit www.firstbank.com to learn more. Let's go ahead and introduce the crew for today. On set, we have Will Stewart, founder and general manager of Tech Sideline across the way. To my right, Chris Coleman, lead analyst and columnist. Giovanni Heater in the fourth chair today. Carter Hill producing behind the scenes. And I'm your host for today, Katie Adams. Before we jump into conversation today, as we record this on Monday, November 14th at 10:47 a.m., there has been a deadly shooting that occurred at the University of Virginia last night, resulting in 3 fatalities and 2 additional victims. Just completely heartbroken for everyone affected by this horrible tragedy in the city of Charlottesville, of course. Just wanted to say that we send our thoughts and prayers to you all and know that we stand with you and support you as you navigate this emotional time. Will, do you have thoughts?
Times like this are difficult because what we do for a living is we talk about sports, and, it feels kind of silly when you come into the office and you see what's unfolding, and so that's all I wanted to say. That we gotta forge ahead with the show here, but like you said, definitely our thoughts and concerns and prayers are with everybody affected by this, and we are not going to get into any of the details, because we don't know them. There's still a lot of stuff coming out, so. Just keep an eye on things, and again, we're thinking about you, and off we go.
As hard as it is to kind of transition from a topic as deep as that, we do have to get into the Duke matchup from this weekend. Will, I know you were there in Durham. How was that experience for you?
Very roomy.
Yes.
Sorry, that's the first thing that comes to mind. I would recommend, if you're local at all and you can make it to a Duke game, go to one. This is the second one I've been to down there. I went to, I guess, the last pre-COVID one. With the Dalton Keene.
Yeah, I was at that one.
It was like the week after we had lost to ODU.
That's correct.
It was like
correct.
the bounce back game, if you will.
Right, yeah. I parked in a parking lot that was, 10, 15 minute walk to the stadium, free, so it's easy access. If you look at my Twitter, you will see that there were a ton of empty seats. I don't know, forgive me, I don't know the details about what they've done to Wallace Wade. I know they did some work to it, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
The press box is what they did mostly, and the press box is really something.
Yeah, the concessions are good, there's lots of room to move around. It is different. It is like going to a high school game, but it's a lot more fun if Virginia Tech wins,
yes.
But I would recommend, if you're anywhere close to Durham, go to a future Tech Duke game there at Wallace Wade.
Got to give it to them when you can move around and sit wherever you want because there's no one there, and they have multiple barbecue options at the concessions at low prices. It makes for a good day, I will say, besides, of course, the result of that game. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into the offensive performance. It started out with a 53-yard DeJuan Lofton touchdown on Virginia Tech's first drive, but unfortunately that momentum was not carried through the rest of the game. Did you get a little hope after that play when they started out on such a hot start? It usually had been such a slow start offensively in games past.
I think I was at the point where I should really have hope right now. That's how I was feeling. But then I was like, but I don't really feel like I don't want to. I don't get myself up like that. But Brent Pry talks about complimentary football, and Tech got it early in the game. I think it was the opening kickoff when Tucker Holloway tackled the returner at
like the 15 or
it was way back. Yeah. So Tech forced the punt. Then they got great field position, and then they scored that quick touchdown.
Right, because Tech forced a 3-and-out for Duke.
Right. And then they forced Duke to punt again. So Tech's second drive also started very near the 50. So you're sitting there. That's the point where I actually did kind of have hope. I'm like, all right, we're up 7-0. We got the ball at midfield now. We were winning the field position game. Yeah. But then I couldn't score out of that, and it was just sort of like Duke didn't blow Tech off the field, but we just sort of died a slow. Yeah,
it's kind of like in basketball. If you get a dunk off the opening tip, it's a nice play and it's a lot of fun. But there's a lot of basketball.
Yeah, it's like you feel great. You're winning at the first TV timeout. And yeah, there's a lot.
But I had my angle on that touchdown pass was it was thrown away from me, and even so I didn't have a great angle on it. But even then, I thought, wow, that's a heck of a play. He dropped it right in there.
And you're thinking, Duke's corners are their weakness, and we exploited it on our first drive. Yeah. And so you're sitting there like, okay, we might have something going. And it wasn't Caleb Smith. And that was one of the keys to the game. It's like it has to be somebody besides Caleb Smith because, Elko has a tendency to sometimes take the other top receivers away and bracket coverage. So it had to be other Tech receivers. And it was on that first drive. So you got some good thoughts there, but couldn't sustain it.
And I want to talk more about that. We talked in the preview about the weakness of this Duke team was their corners. And so after they had that explosive touchdown earlier in the game, you expected them to have that same approach as the game went on and get your receivers more involved. But they didn't really go back to that same approach, which was kind of a mystery to me the rest of the game.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'd have to watch it closer and see if they bracketed Caleb Smith or anything like that. But it's just been a struggle for Virginia Tech all year. It's not like it's been difficult for other teams to get receivers. It's like Boston College, like Virginia Tech, they've got one receiver, and they still scored 31 on Duke, and they got guys running open and everything like that. And
that one receiver is Zay Flowers.
Yeah,
that one receiver is Zay Flowers. And yes, that helps, but it's just disappointing that Tech couldn't take advantage of something that was there, and it's been there all year, and it's there, and it's the 10th game. Not much is going to change at this point, and everybody else has been able to take advantage of it. Now, I'm not surprised. Duke won by 17. I picked Duke to win by 17. It was just lower scoring than I thought it would be.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the specialty stats, specifically what's called big yard plays, and Virginia Tech had 3 passes of greater than or equal to 20 yards, and one of them was on the second play of the game. And honestly, I don't remember the other 2.
Oh, I think one of them was to Caleb Smith, and it was on the second or third possession.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was nothing after that.
Yeah. Right.
You'd mentioned it several times, Chris, where we had been waiting for this Lofton preseason hype to come to fruition. Of course, it did in that play, but it's a play that you were hoping to see earlier than Game 10.
Yeah. He got a touchdown against Pitt, but it's been very quiet for him other than that. And, you saw Justin Fuentes sit in that chair and call him a stud. And then you saw and before the season, like every player on this team that I talked to, I said, who's the breakout offensive player? To a man, they all said DeJuan Lofton. And, the coaches were excited about DeJuan Lofton. So that's 2 teams, 2 staffs in a row that see it from him in practice, but for whatever reason, they can't get it out of him in games.
Nice catch, though. That's not an easy catch, one that drops right in here.
Wasn't an easy throw either because the Duke player was hitting Wells as he threw that.
I thought it was a beautiful pass. Yeah. Watching the replay, I mean, it just went right to Lofton's chest.
That's not the first time this year he's made a great deep pass just as he was getting hit.
Oh, yeah. I remember the ODU one.
Yep.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So that's the least of our concerns is his ability to throw the deep ball.
Yes.
We have to get more guys open on the deep ball.
Yeah.
I believe after that series, they handed it off to Holston 3 times. Holston led the team in carries with 7 for 35 yards, 6 carries for King with 27 yards. But Tech's run blocking improved during this game.
It did. So back-to-back games, Virginia Tech has had their 2 best run blocking grades of the season, according to PFF. And you've seen a wider variety of different types of run calls over the last couple weeks, and it's making it more difficult for defenses to draw bead, as Brent Pry would say. Now Pry has said it. Like they changed the offense in the middle of the season. And I put these quotes in my article yesterday. He basically pretty much said, yeah, after a while we figured out we couldn't just run 2 tight end and try to run the ball down their throat and then run play action. So they've changed some things up. You've seen some more read options. They're not as easy to target, I think, if from a defensive coordinator perspective as they were. But at the same time, it's really tough to change everything in the middle of the season. So basically, I think this staff, they misjudged what they had and what they could do with it, and they've tried to change in the middle of the season, which is very, very difficult to do.
Yeah, but so one of the things they struggle with, and looking at this stat here, this is actually the first time I've looked at it. I'm looking at third downs. Virginia Tech had 12 third down plays and only totaled 35 yards, which is 2.9 yards per third down play. Duke, by comparison, averaged 6.3 yards per third down play. So the Hokies, third and less than or equal to 3, they were 1 of 2. Third and 4 to 7, they were 3 of 7. And then they faced 3 where it's third and long, greater than or equal to 8 yards, and they were 0 for 3 on those. Mm-hmm. So that gets into, I haven't really broken down the running stats, but can you convert on third down, particularly third and long, and they really couldn't. And let's see what Duke did by comparison. Not great on third and long, 1 out of 5, but 3 for 3 on third and short, 4 of 8 third and medium, and 1 for 5 third and long. But then again, Duke took some of those third and longs and converted them on fourth down.
That's true. I think they did do that twice.
And that's been frustrating all year.
Yeah, that is, because Tech actually has one of the better third down defenses, or at least decent.
And they got one of the worst fourth down defenses.
Exactly. Let me get back to my point about run blocking. I said earlier this year that I didn't think Tech's players were being put in a position to succeed. And I'm sitting there going over Parker Clement's grades last year. He's 30 points worse this year than he was last year. He was a good football player last year, and now all of a sudden he's not. It's not like he suddenly lost talent in the offseason. He's the same talent level as he was last year. Well, as Virginia Tech has changed their running scheme a little bit the last 2 weeks, he has his 2 highest run blocking grades of the year. They're back up in the 60s and 70s where they should be. He's played well the last 2 weeks as we've seen the types of running plays change. So he just wasn't put in a position to succeed earlier this year.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, Virginia Tech was a good pass blocking team earlier in the season, and now as they've sort of gotten a lot better at run blocking, now they can't pass block at all. So it seems like every time they fix something else breaks.
Yep.
Yeah, the sacks have definitely ramped up in the last few games. It wasn't too bad against Duke. They gave up 2 sacks, but they were for 16 yards.
But there was a bunch of other pressures, and the overall protection
and then
was
he
bad.
flushed out. Matter of fact, he threw his correct me if I'm wrong, Wells threw his interception on a play where he's flushed.
He's running to his left.
Mm-hmm.
Well, running to his left is not throwing while running to his left is not his strength.
Yeah, that's difficult.
He can do it okay when he's throwing to his right, but not to his left. And I don't really blame him for that because at that point, was it 24-7 at that point? I don't remember.
When he threw the interception, there was 9 minutes, 10 seconds left in the fourth quarter, so I believe.
So at that point, we hadn't done anything since the first drive of the game, and at that point, you're just like, well, maybe if I throw this up, something good will happen because nothing else was good.
Was that on a fourth down?
I don't remember.
I don't know, but
it was.
Carter says it was. So, yeah, you got to put the ball in play.
Yeah.
Don't run out of bounds like
because it's not like you can just spike or just throw it away and then punt it. Because it's fourth down. They're going to have good field position anyway, so you might as well take a chance there.
Yeah.
So he threw 1 interception in this game. He also threw 1 in the Georgia Tech game, which came in the fourth quarter as well. So I guess, they weren't bad interceptions. The one in the Duke game, it got tipped and then secured. But I don't know if he
there was
gets
a couple
nervous
guys
towards
there.
the end of the game and just doesn't make strong decisions.
Just trying to make a play.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think Grant Wells was a better football player at Marshall than he was at Virginia Tech.
So far, yeah.
So,
Yes.
So take that however you want to.
Yeah.
It's becoming a theme to have so many scoreless quarters. That touchdown ended up being the only points that Virginia Tech would score in this game. They had a chance to score a field goal right before halftime. It was not Will Ross, but John Love, who attempted the 50-yarder. Being at the game, I didn't even notice that Will Ross had gotten benched.
I thought it was odd that the kick was that short because Ross has a stronger leg.
I knew it was happening. I was driving to PK's to watch the game, so I was listening to Burnup's pregame interview with Pry, and Pry said it on the pregame radio that they were trying a new place kicker. And
do we know the reason for that?
They thought maybe that he was a better option, and they wanted to give somebody else a better.
I think
chance.
he wasn't happy with the fact that Ross had missed his last 2 attempts and missed 2 extra points.
Ross's kicks are low.
Yeah.
Like maybe he doesn't have the strongest
That's why
leg
they
in the
got
world.
blocked.
So yeah, definitely like that. The block against Georgia Tech was like the Tech line blocked fine. It was just the
Didn't one
kick
get
itself
blocked
was
at
low,
Pitt,
and they
too?
made it really easy to block. So they wanted to go in a different direction there. Ultimately, doesn't seem like the Tech has a great option either way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've only seen John Love kick once now.
He was a 5-star kicker.
Yeah, but here's
Everyone is a
everybody.
five-star.
Here's the thing. So my former personal trainer was the punter for Tech, and so he used to go all those kicking and punting camps, and he was like, to get that 5-star status, there's like 2 or 3 camps that you're
Right.
supposed to show up to. If you show up, they give you 5-star status.
Yeah.
Right.
So we could ignore star rankings for kickers and punters.
Scott Glesner said that the TV broadcast said it was for low kicks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very much like the Alabama-Tennessee game winner that was insanely low. If y'all watched the
yeah.
video of that replay.
Goodness.
Just got over.
Yes, exactly. I guess I don't know how much you can expect from a true freshman in their first ever collegiate kick to make it from 50 yards. You would hope, though. I mean, that's all they practice.
I guess
is
though
kicking
the
field
worry is that it didn't have the distance either.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
now maybe
the wind was all. It was in his face. The wind was
it
coming
wasn't-
at him.
Okay,
He was
and
kicking into it.
and he knows why Ross got benched because Ross had been kicking low. Here's the thing: to kick a 50-yarder, you have to kick it low,
right.
right? So I don't know if he decided, well, Ross got benched because he'd been kicking it low, so I'm just going to kick this one high, and it's when the wind is kind of coming into your face. That's kind of a recipe for the kick being short. So
So then it affected his decision making later when it was 17-7, I believe, and Tech was ordinarily within field goal range, and Pride decided to go for it on 4th down. And I think that was the same play that went in the corner of the end zone to Caleb
Smith,
Smith. Right?
who was in double coverage.
Correct.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up next.
But
is
Caleb got it. Caleb's made that catch. And
he's
it's a
made it
shame.
9 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
That's what I said, turning to my sister. Like, he makes that 90%
That guy makes
of the time.
that catch. That was the right guy to go to.
yeah.
So what is y'all's, that's what I was going to ask, is what is you all's opinion on that play? Do you agree with going for it on 4th down, or would you take the points?
Do you remember the distance? I mean, we can look it
4th
up.
and 4
Yeah,
was what we...
But how
I'm fine.
long would the field goal have been?
I'm fine with the decision, and I think Virginia Tech struggles to even get down and get within touchdown range.
So
anyway.
take your shots.
So there's no guarantee that they were. All right, let's say they had kicked a field goal there,
Right.
and it was 17-10. There was no guarantee you were going to get back in a position to have a chance to score a touchdown again. So you need to try while you're there to score the touchdown. You've got a better chance of getting back into field goal range than you do touchdown range.
Right.
That's a good point.
So I think he did the right thing there.
We trailed by 10 at the time, so Caleb Smith makes that catch. It's only a
Right.
3-point gain.
Right. Yeah, so I think he did the right thing there. I certainly understand the other argument too, but I think when your offense is as bad as Virginia Tech's is, you're the head coach, you're trying to find a way to coax as many points out of them as you can. That makes those decisions sometimes more difficult, but sometimes easier. I honestly don't think that was a very difficult decision. If you're in, no, I watched the Carolina Wake game on Saturday night, and there were some questionable decisions by both of those staffs inside the 10-yard line. Both of them went for it on 4th down, like inside the 10 at various points, and got stopped. North Carolina ended up winning, but it wasn't. I don't think it was a great decision for them to go for it on 4th and 1 earlier when the field goal would have given them the lead, and then Wake could have gone up. I mean, Wake ended up losing by 2, and they gave up the chance to score 3 points earlier in the game to go for it on 4th down. So, but I think those decisions, like when you're going to get the ball back and you've been scoring points, but for Virginia Tech, it's like, man, we've got a chance to score a touchdown here. We might never have that chance again in this game, so we need to take advantage of it.
So since we're talking about third downs and 4th downs, this is the first time I looked this up, so I wanted to share it because it matches my perception. So on offense, Virginia Tech is 118th in the country in 3rd down conversion percentage, 31.2%. Not great, 118th in the country. On 4th down, they're 27.3%, which is tied for 129th. So Tech struggles to make it on 3rd and 4th down. Now the opponents convert 34.2% on 3rd down, which is Virginia Tech's 33rd in the country. It's one of their best, if not I think it's actually the best team stat they have.
Yes.
But then you look at opponents' 4th downs, they convert two out of every 3, and Tech's defense is tied for 117 in the country. So not relevant to making the decision, but I was looking the stat up and thought I'd share it. So the Hokies do a really good job defensively on third down, but struggle on fourth down.
Yep. We'll talk more about the offense, but want to toss it over to Gio for the first time.
Yeah, so I think it's a good time to bring up stat time with our guy Scott Glesner. So he put some really interesting stuff in there, and we'll start with this one. The last time Virginia Tech has lost to 2 in-state opponents in the same season was 1976. That was against Richmond and William and Mary. The last time Virginia Tech lost to 3 in-state opponents in the same season was 1957. That was William and Mary, UVA, and VMI. Obviously, Liberty and UVA left on the schedule, so interesting there. Already lost to Old Dominion, and it's been a long time since they've lost to 2 and 3 in-state opponents.
Well, I guess it's a good thing there's not a 4th in-state opponent on the schedule this year.
On the schedule.
Every week we have more disappointing stats to talk about, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then another one for you that unfortunately also is a negative. November 13th is the earliest that Virginia Tech's men's basketball team has more wins than the football team.
Yes.
The earliest before that was November 22nd, 1950. Football had no wins, and men's basketball won their season opener and was 1-0.
All these things going back to the 50s, early 50s.
It's been a long time.
It's been a while.
So since we're like throwing out horrible stats, let's throw out a good one. So Virginia Tech had 0 penalties against Duke. Now they did have a penalty; it just wasn't accepted.
Oh.
But
was it an Armani Chapman pass interference?
It was a pass interference.
Yeah. And they
Okay.
picked it up. Or no, it was declined. Okay.
So looking at the Hokie Sports stats database that Damian Salas puts together, it goes back to 1987, and that's the first time Virginia Tech's ever had 0 penalties in a game in that stats database from 1987 on. So I looked up there were 4 other times where Tech had 1 penalty, and I think it's interesting to look at the games. First of all, 0 penalties they lost, and they also lost 2 out of the 4 games where they had just 1 penalty. So in order chronologically, when Tech beat UAB in Blacksburg 37-0 in 1997, Tech had 0 penalties. That hideous loss to East Carolina in Charlotte when it was 140 degrees that day, Virginia Tech had only 1 penalty that day. Penalties were not their problem that day. Then against this is clutch. Against UVA in 2012, Tech won 17-14 and had 1 penalty that day.
Last second field goal to win the game, I believe.
Yeah, thanks to
Mike London's
stellar clock management skills. And the last time Virginia Tech only had 1 penalty in a game was the Syracuse game last year.
And lost.
Tech lost that game 41-36.
So a lot of those games were
3 out of the top 5 were losses.
Crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Now I have stats too.
Okay.
Stat time with Chris Coleman.
These are bad stats.
These are bad
Stat
stats.
time with Chris Coleman.
So this is from our friend Shelton Moss. And so he was at the basketball game last night, and we were all talking. He keeps the S&P Plus data, and he's got it all the way back to 2005. This is Bill Connolly's advanced stats.
Yeah.
As of week 11, the Hokie offense ranks 123rd nationally with 14.8 adjusted points per game, and that essentially corrects for tempo, strength of schedule, and things like that.
And probably defensive.
I don't know.
Not sure about that.
But that's the worst power mark of all Power 5 teams this year.
Right.
But it gets worse than that. All right. Since 2005, the Virginia Tech offense, if the season ended today, would be the 3rd worst Power 5 offense ever by adjusted points per game, and the 4th worst ever by just the raw data.
Right.
That's 1,180 teams if you include the old Big East, like when West Virginia, Louisville, and all that were all still in the Big East. So 3rd or 4th worst since 2005 out of 1,180 teams.
That reminds me of when Pittsburgh beat Tech 52-22 back in 2018, and Pittsburgh averaged 13.9 yards per game and
Per play.
excuse
Was
me.
it that low? It seemed like a higher than that.
And I crunched and that was like the highest number between 2 FBS teams. And I crunched the numbers, and it's like the worst yards per play performance out of 17,000 games or something like that.
Right.
Mind-blowing stuff.
Right. And the other one, I guess, is you told me this one. And Virginia Tech is now the only FBS team who has not scored 30 points in a game this year.
Yeah, FBS, not Power 5.
Right.
Right.
So, because UMass finally hit 30 points in a game this past weekend. So now Tech is the only FBS team to not score 30.
Yeah.
So even even Wofford.
No, Wofford is FCS, right?
Yes,
Right.
okay,
But there's 131 FBS teams, and Virginia Tech is the only one to not score 30. So
I've got a couple. Before, are you going to editorialize now, or can I do
I'm
mine?
going to editorialize. All right, so you're going to say Virginia Tech lacks talent. I agree with you. I also don't think Virginia Tech is the third or fourth least talented team in the country out of 1,180 teams. Yeah. We have much, much deeper issues than our talent level. That's my editorial.
There is a point where it is about the coaching and not the talent.
Yes.
So Virginia Tech is number 123 in scoring, and this includes defensive and special team scores at 18.9 points per game. So they still haven't scored 30 points in a game, and last time they failed to score 30 in a game was 1977. So they got, we'll see how things go at UVA. They've got 2 games left, I guess. So I went through this exercise on Twitter, and I put this on the boards too, and I said, I looked at scoring, not an advanced stat, just points per game. And if you are, out of 131 FBS teams, if you're middle of the pack, you are averaging 29.0 points per game. Mm-hmm. So if Tech averaged 29 points per game, if Tech scored 29 points every game, which is silly, that's not how it works, but humor me.
Sure.
Tech would be 7-3 if they scored 29 points per game.
So if they were average offensively. Basically.
Yes, from a scoring standpoint.
Yes.
And somebody said to me, oh, well, that would actually change the dynamics of some of the games. And I said, you're right. WVU only scored 33 points. If Tech was in the midst of scoring 29, it might have dragged WVU down, and you'd be 8-2 instead of 7-3. So that kind of puts into perspective. If you were just average every time out, you'd be 7-3.
So close. Well, that was a fun little stat time with Chris Coleman and stats tangent in general. Of course, going back to the 0 penalties, that means no sprints this week, although they probably should be doing some sprints in general.
Yeah.
But Duke only had 4 penalties for 30 yards, so we didn't get much help there. Of course, the only 1 interception. Going off of that stat, in previous games, we were able to blame losses on the amount of penalties or the amount of turnovers. But what is this one?
You got out executed, out schemed,
out coached,
some out talented in some aspects. But at the same time, this Duke team has improved by 40 points per game last year. They lost their ACC games by an average of 32 points last year. This year, in their ACC games, they're averaging 10 points ahead. They're like plus 10, plus 11, something like that. So they flipped it on a dime.
Yeah.
And they didn't add that many guys in the transfer portal, just 6. The big thing,
7.
but 7, okay.
6 that contribute.
Right.
So
but then they lost their 2 best players.
Yeah.
Right. So
so here they are. They've just, and I'm not saying this because just to blast on the Tech staff. I'm saying this because Duke, it's really remarkable what they've done. Yeah. Nobody would have predicted this. They got picked last in the Coastal for a reason, because they looked like a terrible football team, and they've made it work.
Duke ends their season at home against Wake Forest. I mean, if they win that game, undoubtedly Mike Elko has to be coach of the year.
He has to be.
Doesn't matter what Mac Brown does.
Yeah, I agree. I think he should be. That's going to be a really interesting game, because Dave Clawson was Elko's mentor. Was his longtime defensive coordinator at Bowling Green. I think he was with him at Richmond.
The pupil defeats the teacher.
Yeah, it could be. We'll see.
So I'm sure Duke fans are going to show up for that. They'll probably turn out 15,000, 16,000 maybe.
Yeah, they do this thing at the Duke game that we noticed. For students that stay through the whole game, they give out tons of money in the fourth quarter.
They give them $100.
You can win $1,000 in the fourth quarter just for being a student that stays the whole game. So that's their incentive to get students to stay. I mean, it's smart. I would stay the whole game, of course, regardless. But for the fans that don't, you win $1,000.
So they blast out of that video board they've got. They blast right up until you're lining up to snap the football on offense, because they got no crowd noise, so they're just cranking music.
Have you ever seen the movie Major League?
It's on my DVR right now. Haven't watched it in a long time, but it's waiting.
They're having attendance problems because the team is so bad. And at one point, they announced Die Hard Night, and they give free admittance to anybody who was actually live the last time the Indians won the pennant.
It reminds me.
That's something that reminds me of the whole student thing at Duke.
Oh, it reminds me of Frank Beamer's first year when they played Cincinnati at the end of the year.
It was 10,000 people there.
There were 10,000.
So
it was cold, and apparently there was snow all over the place. And what did Frank say in his book? He said something
he said he wished he could find out exactly who those 10,000
people
were and give them a big party or something.
Buddy of mine was one of them. He was there.
Yeah.
Two more things to get to regarding the offense in the first half. Across the board, the offense struggled, but one stat that really stood out to me was time of possession, in which they were outgained all 4 quarters. We'll, of course, talk about the defense in the second half, but you just can't have them out there as much as they did.
Yeah, it's been an issue. I don't think it was as much of an issue the previous 2 games as some people made it out to be, but I think it was an issue in this game. I do think when you're out there that much against a team that likes to run it as much as Duke does, that it can. It's not only difficult physically, but you reach a point where mentally you're worn out and you just don't want to focus anymore, because at that point, by the 4th quarter, it becomes clear that the offense isn't going to score. Right. So you're just basically out there waiting for the game to end. It makes it really hard to mentally focus in when you're out there for that many snaps and you're not getting any help.
Yeah, it probably peaked at mid-3rd quarter. Duke was winning 17-7, and they had 51 plays to Tech's 30, and their time of possession was 26:01 to Tech's 11:04.
Right.
So 37 minutes, they had the ball 26.
Now, at the same time, Tech had some big mental breakdowns on defense and coverage on Duke's first 2 touchdowns before the Tech defense got tired.
Right.
Stuff that's just every now and then you do expect a breakdown in coverage. It happens to even the best teams, but these are the players making the mistakes for Tech in a lot of cases were veteran players who've been through all the battles, and you just see a slot receiver running a quick 3-yard out, and then nobody goes with him. He's just there. And then you see another wide receiver just run a basic corner route to the pylon, and both defensive backs go to the inside. And it's wide open. Like any college quarterback can complete those passes. They're just so wide open. We haven't had a receiver running that wide open all year. Yep. And so yeah, I mean, those were just mental lapses by the Virginia Tech defense early in the game, before they had gotten worn out, before they were mentally tired, before they were physically tired. So there's too much of that stuff going on of where guys, they just don't recognize where they're supposed to be in zone coverage, and that shouldn't be happening in Game 10.
So we sit here when we talk about 3rd and 4th down conversion percentages, and it's one thing to look at the numbers, but it's another to, and I'm not backing this up with any empirical data, I haven't studied it or anything, but it just feels like a lot of the time, like that 3rd and 19 against Georgia Tech, like the other teams just busting guys wide open. They're not really battling for some of those 3rd and 4th down conversions like Virginia Tech seems to do. And again, that's just I'm lost in the field.
Seems a little too easy.
Yeah.
Scott brings up a good point that I even forgot about. First play for Duke should have been a touchdown.
90 yards.
Yeah.
He was gone.
Oh,
I think it was Calhoun,
right.
and he had, who was in coverage? Was it Chapman?
Probably.
Yeah,
regardless,
it was.
It was, and he cooked him.
Yeah.
And Riley Leonard just overthrew
it.
Yeah, like that would have been a touchdown.
Yeah, that's true.
Another takeaway, my last one, was the effort to get Tucker Holloway involved. What is it? His first snaps at wide receiver for this game?
5 against Wofford.
Okay.
I think he got 14 snaps in this game, caught 3 passes. So there was a concerted effort to get him involved in the offense. He was on the kickoff team, of course, wearing number 25, and made that great play on the opening kickoff. As a punt returner, though, Virginia Tech wasn't playing Georgia Tech this week, so
didn't get an opportunity.
So they couldn't block anybody. So he didn't get an opportunity to return punts. That's going to be a real interesting redshirt decision.
I guess we'll find out tomorrow.
I would think so.
At the press conference.
I think we'll either find out tomorrow, or Pry will say something like, "Yeah, we're going to keep talking about it all week, and then we'll see what happens." Maybe that's what I'd do. Like, even if I was planning on redshirting him, I might say that, so at least Liberty, maybe they prepare for him. Yeah. I don't.
I hate the way that college football is right now, where you just never know who's going to play. I mean, the Georgia Tech game, we all think it's Jeff Sims, and it's not. When we played BC last year, we think that Phil Draco is going to play, and then he's not. So that could be something, like if they were trying to mismatch Liberty and they said he's going to play, but he's not.
But he's not.
So in the NFL, don't they make you issue an injury report?
Yes.
You can't be fudging it.
Yeah, it's like probable, questionable, doubtful, and I'm sure there's punishments if they found out that you're intentionally.
They had. Oh, go ahead, Will.
Remember when the ACC did that for a while? I think they and the teams just
it was all
sandbagged.
BS.
It was all BS.
Everybody's questionable.
Yeah.
They had Josh Allen going into this week. They had him hour by hour. Is what they, not even like question, hour by hour.
So did he actually play, Gio?
And he started and played.
Oh, okay.
Rough night for the Bills.
Whatever. We're not going to talk about it, Katie.
That's going to wrap up the first half, but I'll throw it back over to you, Gio, before we head to break.
Yeah. Another just interesting question here. This comes from Chris C. Given the historically poor offensive performance, does Pry have any other options other than a complete overhaul of the offensive staff this offseason?
I will say this from a positive standpoint. They have changed some things with the running game in the middle of the season that's made it more successful. Now, of course, the problem with that is the pass protection is completely broken down while the run blocking has gotten better. My biggest concern, and this, I guess that this would be a concern either way, is you've got an offensive coordinator who comes from one offensive background. You've got an offensive line coach and your running game coordinator who comes from a Wisconsin background, which is kind of the type of offense Tech wanted to run, but now they figured out they can't. And then they've got Glenn who comes from kind of another offensive background. And those are your three coordinators: offensive coordinator, running game coordinator, passing game coordinator. They haven't been able to make those pieces fit together this year. Will they be able to make them fit together in the offseason? If they don't make changes, I don't know. And I don't pretend to know what Pry's thinking. Generally speaking, I've been following his lead all year. He's been very honest with the media. And I wrote about this yesterday. He keeps talking about, basically, he's said, we haven't done a good enough coaching job this year. If you read a lot of his comments, that's what he sounds like. I mean, whether it's offense, defense, or just team fundamentals, that's what he keeps. He doesn't say that directly, but when you say things like, yeah, we can't be so vanilla, we need to do a better job using our personnel, it's the same thing, right? Yeah. So I'll be really interested. Now, if he did want to make a change, and I'm not saying he does or even that he should or anything like that, but so Tyler Bowen was signed to a 3-year contract rather than your normal 2-year contract at $850,000 a year. So if you did want to make a change there, at the end of the season, it's going to cost $1.7 million. The next offensive coordinator would probably at least want to bring in a couple of his own coaches. So you'd probably be talking about you'd be talking probably $3+ million in buyouts 1 year after you spent $10 million or more buying out the old coaching staff. So I have no idea if they could even afford that or
the
not. The
medium meal quality is going to continue to go down if they keep buying out.
Yeah.
So, so let me address this a little bit as well. There are 4 coaches on this staff with 3-year contracts. Tyler Bowen, you mentioned him. Joe Rudolph. So Tyler Bowen's $850K, Joe Rudolph $725K. Stu Holt has a 3-year contract at $500K. And over on the defensive side, Chris Marv is the one with the 3-year contract at $825K.
So the coordinators plus Rudolph.
Yeah. So there are a lot of things are running through my mind. Let's talk about half measures and full measures. I don't think you're going to see any full measures, like wiping out the entire offensive staff. That's a full measure. That's not going to happen. So the half measures, there are different kind of half measures you can take. There are public things that you can see outside externally, and that's just done for PR because coaches, when it gets right down to it, don't win games like that. And then there are changes you make behind the scenes, and that's when you can start and the fans don't necessarily see this, you can start shuffling responsibilities and moving guys around that are already on staff. The public kind of changes might be, and I'm not saying he's going to do this, I'm just throwing it out there. Yeah, we're moving Brad Glenn up to co-offensive coordinator.
No, I think that could be a title.
And that's a public thing, and the fans go, "Oh, at least he's doing something."
That's right. Well, if you feel like you need to make some kind of a change, but you don't want to gut the whole offensive staff, or you can't afford to, then yes, that's what you do. You just come out and say, well, next season Glenn's the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Or the play caller, or however you want to phrase it, if they want to do that.
And other changes you can make that aren't readily apparent to fans is changing the style of offense.
Which they've done in the middle of the season. Yeah. And Price basically come out and said, we've done that. But when you change it in the middle of the season, there's only so much you can do, right?
Yeah.
We saw them do it in the middle of the 2019 season, and it worked splendidly.
Yeah.
So it can happen. It's just not happening for.
But your average fan who doesn't pay any attention to the press conferences isn't even really going to notice.
That's why I've been including so many Pry quotes in my articles this year, because yes, most people don't read the quotes. But he's basically spent the whole season. I mean, he's been critical of the offense and what they've done with it. He's been critical of himself, saying I called 2 bad plays on those critical plays against Georgia Tech. He was critical about the Duke game, saying Tech mistimed the point where they show their defense, what kind of coverage there is, whether they're bringing pressure or not. And Duke burned them for it. And there were so many times when I was watching that game, I would see Duke would tip their hand on defense of what type of coverage, whether they're blitzing or not, and they do it right before Tech snapped the ball. Yeah. So when Tech snapped it, they were basically going right into the teeth of Georgia Tech. It's like Duke. They knew when Tech was going to snap it, or about when they were going to snap it. And so at that point, I mean, when you snap the ball, there's no way the play is going to work because they've got you running the play they want you to run. Yeah. So there's little things like that with Virginia Tech that aren't working, and that talent doesn't matter.
That's OJT on the coaches.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So they've got to get better. It's not just that at X's and O's, but the operation, like things like that, like the timing of when you show your blitzes and when you show your coverages and mixing up when you snap it and everything like that. It's just so many little red flags like that has to be tremendously improved upon.
Yep.
Monday, November 14th, 11:26 a.m. An update on the ongoing situation at UVA. The suspect is in custody, so
good.
An answered prayer for sure. That's going to lead us into our break here on episode 271 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, presented by First Bank and Trust. Talked a lot about the offensive showing in the first half, and in the second half, we'll get to the defense, do some ACC Power Rankings, and of course, we'll get into some basketball. Make sure you stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back into episode 271 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Talked a lot about the offense in the first half, and now we turn the page to the defense. Defensively, we expected them to go up against a rush-heavy offense in the Blue Devils, and they did. Jordan Waters with 15 carries and Jalen Coleman with 13, a guy who we didn't know if he was going to play or not. He indeed did and had a big role. Comparing that to Holston and King's 7 and 6 carries. Overall, I thought we did a better job stopping the run and didn't give up a bunch of chunk plays as we thought could happen.
I thought the game plan for Tech was sound, that they did have an 8th man in the box a lot. I mean, they had to slow down Duke's running game. Like, if Riley Leonard had been allowed to run wild like he's been allowed to in recent weeks, that was going to be no contest from the very beginning. So they did what they had to do. They did as much as they could to take away the running game. Duke still ran the ball fairly well, but they didn't gash Tech like I was afraid they were going to do coming into the game. Now, when you do that, that will open up a few holes in your secondary here and there. But even then, generally speaking, I think it was more coverage breakdowns on Virginia Tech's part, especially on those 2 touchdown passes. But generally speaking, I thought the game plan was sound, and it was a better defensive performance than I thought it was going to be.
Against the running game.
Yeah, against the running game.
So Duke averaged 4 yards a carry, but going through Waters, Coleman, and Leonard, the longest carry was 14, 11, and 13.
Yeah, so there's no big chunk yardage. So if you told me before the game that Duke was going to average exactly 4 yards per carry,
you'd be like, I like our chances.
And they weren't going to...
that we scored first. And
we scored first.
Going to commit 0 penalties.
No running plays longer than 14 yards.
Only 1 turnover in the fourth
exactly.
quarter.
Turnover margin was even. I felt really good about all of that. So, so I'm disappointed of the coverage busts, but on the whole, I thought Duke was going to score a lot of points, and they've scored points recently against some other teams. I mean, they dropped 38 on Boston College, who won a football game this past weekend.
Yes, so we'll talk about it later. I cannot believe it.
So overall, I'm happy because they scored fewer points than I thought they were.
Satisfied,
yeah.
So the run defense was better than we had hoped. We obviously saw the pass coverage not as great. A play I do want to highlight was the incredible momentum swing that came when Mansoor Delane intercepted Riley Leonard on the 2-yard line for his first career interception. This guy continues to play at a high level despite his young age.
And it was 7-3 at that point, right?
That's correct.
Tech was winning.
Yeah. So, and those of you in the stadium actually got to see the interception.
Yes.
Those of us watching on television did not.
Because they kept the camera on Riley Leonard.
Yeah, I saw that on the game.
So they throw it, and I'm just sitting there like,
what happened?
And I hear some people getting excited, and I'm like, well, is it a touchdown or is it an interception? I don't know.
So I had a good angle at that. That occurred way down there, opposite corner from me. Mm-hmm. But I actually watched that receiver and Delane I just watched the whole thing unfold, and he never should have thrown that ball.
They shouldn't have. Delane was in front of it the whole time. Yeah, so Delane's a good player.
Yeah.
Need a few more like him.
Delane had a ton of family at that game, so it was so fun to see 5-23 jerseys just stand up and erupt after he made that interception. So thrilled for him. I really hope we have him in maroon and orange for years to come, but just want to point out the fact that you have to recruit the current players on your roster like you recruit the kids coming from high school.
You do, and Delane is a special case scenario. I don't want to say that he's looking to leave. He likes it here. I know he likes it here. Yeah. But you also have to deal with the modern realities of the college game. And his brother is going to be a 5-star recruit who already has dozens of offers from your Alabamas and Ohio States. And
now, where's the family from?
Maryland.
Maryland. Okay. So he had a bunch of people come all the way down from Maryland to be it. Okay.
His brother's a 2025 recruit. His brother's sought after by every program in the country. And Delane is a very good player on his own right. If Delane entered the transfer portal, he could get double what he would normally get in NIL money, I think, just because teams would be trying to get a package deal with him and his brother. So because each of them exists individually, both of them's value is raised.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech needs to come up with something for Delane in the offseason. I don't think he's looking to leave or anything like that. He's a great guy, heck of a football player. But the fact of the matter is, he's going to get offered stuff. Whether he enters the portal or not. That's just the way it is in college football. And you can either stay here and make $0 or go somewhere else and make probably really good money for a player his talent level and who's related to a 5-star recruit.
He'll make something here.
He needs to make something here, and he needs to make a lot here, quite frankly. He probably neneeds to be our highest paid player next year.
Yep.
So if I don't think it's going to be an issue this year as much as it would be the next year because his brother's a 2025 recruit. But I'm just trying to alert people to the modern realities of college football.
Now, Tech is involved in recruiting his brother.
Yes, they are.
How much do you know about that?
The whole family likes Tech.
Yeah.
They like Tech very much. Mansoor wouldn't be here if they didn't.
And he has visited. Here,
right, so I do think if Virginia Tech, I actually do think Tech, they have an opportunity. I think he's one of the few 5-star guys they would have a chance to sign in this day and age. But they can't do that at 2-8. They're going to have to get a lot better this next year to have a chance. Even if like he wanted really to come here, it would be like, yeah, they're not very good, and we can, I can go to Alabama, and right. So if we get our stuff together, I do think we'd have a chance to land him. But the first things first is you got to take care of your best football players on your team. He's one of those that needs to be taken care of.
I believe his name is Fahim.
That's correct.
Delane.
That's correct.
That'd be awesome if we could add another set of brothers and have both of them play here.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. And they would only be here together for 1 year, I think, since the younger is a 2025 guy. But and again, I'm not criticizing the Delanes in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I don't know what's going on through their heads or anything like that, but I'm just saying the fact of the matter is people are going to reach out to him with offers. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So if you're able to, you should go buy a Mansoor Delane jersey from Fanatics because he does
they only made like $4 a jersey off that stuff.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
They really don't make much from it. But
if you own a business that Mansoor Delane can promote for you,
right,
and go through Hokies Exchange.
So like, how much is one of those jerseys? Like $140?
$140.
I'd rather just give Mansoor Delane $140.
To
at least he gets $140 instead of $4.
To do a Zoom call with your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
L-Rods needs to sponsor an athlete.
That
would be the ultimate sponsorship.
He loves Cabo.
Restaurants are cheap.
Really?
Though. Restaurants are notoriously cheap. If you're expecting good NIL money to come from a restaurant, you're going to be waiting a long time.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
And he also loves wings.
Okay.
So I listened to his interview with Roth and Barnum that night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anywhere that has wings or Cabo would be a good
Sign
fit
him
for him.
up.
Yep.
Well, the big difference in this game was Duke's ability to convert on 4th down. They converted 2 out of 3, which will really wear a defense down if you're so close to getting off the field and you have to stay out for another series. That was one of the things that contributed to the loss.
And the other thing that people don't really talk about is a lot of times there is a commercial break between possessions, so it's not a huge deal. But there are some times when there's not. So if there's a 3 and out, you're a defensive player. You've barely sat down on the bench, and it's not just a physical thing. It's you don't even have a chance to go through your adjustments with your coaches, and you're right back out there on the field. So you got to pick up a couple first downs just to give your coaches a chance to talk to their players about things they're seeing and things like that. So it hurts you physically, but it also hurts you from a mental standpoint.
So I'm counting the 3 and outs for Virginia Tech. 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4.
And one of those 3 and outs came after the Mansoor Delane interception, which was just killer when you have a prime opportunity to take advantage in this game.
Yeah, and I think they actually backed up 1 yard in that possession. Oof. 3 of the 3 and outs, they were all in a row, spanning the first and second quarter.
Yeah.
Right. So hot start, and then I think they picked up a first down on their second drive, and then after that, it was just
you
all
are
downhill.
correct. Yep.
Overall, the defense held Duke to just 24 points, which was their second to worst offensive showing through 10 games. Can't really ask for much more. Even Coach Price said after the game, we just fight and claw defensively to hang on, and when we don't get some help, it just makes it too much to overcome, of course, bringing it back to the lack of offense.
Yeah, and he's right. I mean, when you score 24 points, or excuse me, when you allow 24 points, the average is scoring is 29.
It's 29.
So generally speaking, for most teams, when they hold the other team to 24 points, You're
win. In there. Yep.
Yeah, and at least you'll have a chance to win. But yeah, it is kind of sad when you hold them to 24 and you don't have a chance at all at the end of the game. Though in this case, I admire the defense's persistence and everything like that. If they had been mentally into the game for the first 2 quarters from a coverage standpoint, though, it could have been oh my gosh, I guess it could have been 10-3 in the 4th quarter.
Yep.
You know?
Wow, so Nasir Peoples with 10 tackles to lead the defense.
He's had a pretty good year. The Peoples has had a pretty good year. Chamari seems to be, as the season goes on, seems to be getting lost in coverage more and more. Chapman has been hurt. Like, there was a point in the season where he wasn't even practicing. They were just throwing him out there and playing him on Saturdays, so he hasn't been 100%. But generally speaking, it's been a lot of, like, Mansoor Delane, I would say, over the last 4 weeks has been Virginia Tech's best defensive player.
Yep.
And he's a freshman, so the issue has been some of the veterans.
Last thing I want to add is that Duke had solid field position a lot of times. Our punting unit was something that we used to be able to rely on a lot, and it kind of has digressed this year.
Yeah. What else do you say? I mean,
I wish it was better.
Yeah,
the only thing I can add is, are we going to hear something at season?
Is he hurt?
Is there something going on there?
Right.
Because
I mean, he punted so well for Virginia Tech last season, and then the first 4 games of this season, he was just like he was last year, and then all of a sudden, it just fell off a cliff. So you wonder if there is some sort of little tweak, some little minor injury that's affecting him. You also wonder if they tried to change something with his technique, and now he's overcoached. Yeah. And
not to compare apples and dump trucks, but, we had no idea what was going on with the Tisdale situation until they actually went public with it.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I just wonder if there's something going on with Peter Moore as well.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. So, but that doesn't change the facts that the punt team has turned from a strength to a weakness.
Stats,
That's all we're not criticizing Peter Moore, because we do think he's either hurt or maybe they tried to change something. But
yeah.
Somebody didn't turn his phone down.
But again, it's like so Peter Moore is a very talented player, and he just didn't. It's not like his talent level dropped overnight, right? He's the same talent level, so he's either hurt or there's something from a technique standpoint that they've gotten away from.
Well, for the first time since 1951, Virginia Tech has lost 7 consecutive games. Unless either of you have more thoughts on this game, it seems like a good time to move on to ACC Power Rankings.
Frank Beamer was 5 years old in 1951, turned 5 years old.
And with that, we welcome David Cunningham to the set.
On set.
As we look at these 7 ACC games that were played this weekend, that's the only time that'll happen this whole season. We can start from bottom to top as I get this out.
You didn't end up putting
Tech
last.
And now I kind of wish I had, because I feel bad because I have UVA last.
Well, let's get into it. We can start from the bottom. David, like he said, he has Virginia Tech last, and Chris has UVA last. Virginia Tech obviously comes up short at Duke. The UVA game had an interesting start. Something we had never seen before, I don't think.
Back-to-back pick sixes.
So it was 15 seconds in the game, and Pitt was up 14-0.
Right. I looked at my phone. It's 14:46 left in the first quarter. Pitt's already up 14-0.
That's basically why I have UVA last.
Yeah.
It's because it was a higher level of incompetence this week than we saw from Virginia Tech. So what have you done for me lately, right? So when you throw 2 pick sixes on the first, I mean, Pitt didn't have to score the rest of the game after the first 15 seconds, and they would have won.
Yeah.
Right. And I look at Brennan Armstrong's stats: 7 touchdowns, 12 interceptions on the year. His completion percentage has dropped by like 11% or something. It's just not a well-coached football team, and they were worse this week than Virginia Tech was, so I dropped them to last, as much as I hate to say it today.
So you both have Virginia Tech and UVA last. David at 12th. You have Syracuse, which has completely fallen off after that.
Gio's not happy.
Dude,
Any thoughts, Gio? 38-3 loss against Florida State.
Well, first of all, I don't think our viewers like when I talk about Syracuse, but so I'll preface it with that. So I apologize. Dude, I don't know what happened. You could have made the excuse at first. Schrader got hurt towards the end of the game against Clemson. He looked like literally limping through his scrambles. The next game against Pittsburgh, or no, Notre Dame was the next game. So they took him out. They lose Notre Dame. He doesn't play 3/4 of that game. He doesn't play against Pitt. They lose that game. Well, he played against Florida State, and in front of a sold-out crowd again, they lost 38-3. So that's just incompetence.
And also Florida State's destroying people right now.
Florida State's good.
I mean, they've given up 6 points the last 2 weeks combined.
But you can't score 3 points, and I don't understand what
Syracuse just hasn't looked good over the past couple. Syracuse has got bowl eligible and then threw the towel.
Yeah, 4 in a row. Yeah.
Say, hey, first bowl game since 2018, so we'll take it.
Yeah.
Chris, you gave Boston College a bump from 14th to 12th after that 1-point victory at NC State. I mean, of course, NC State gets away with the 1-point victory against us, but they drop it to Boston College.
You know, the thing is, there's 2 games of film out on their quarterback now. So there's more chance for defenses to study strengths and weaknesses and all that. BC has gotten better.
It amazes me that Boston
beat
College has won 2 ACC games.
I've sat here and said, you know what, I'm going to keep them last all year.
Yeah.
Because there's no way they're going to win another game. They're that bad. Well, now they've gotten better their last 2 weeks. Like, they took Duke down to the wire, lost that game 38-31, and now they win on the road against NC State. You've got to bump them up.
They have a trajectory going up for sure. Both of you have Georgia Tech at 11, who surprisingly lost to Miami 35-14. I was going to take Georgia Tech in this game.
I thought that was one of those games where I wouldn't have been shocked if Georgia Tech won because it's Miami.
Yes.
But also Miami is a more talented football team, and Miami's capable of playing well when everything comes together for them. It just doesn't come together for them very often.
Yeah, Georgia Tech. Well, and did you see? I saw earlier Zach Pyron's out for the year.
Oh my God.
with the clavicle injury.
So they are playing Zach Gibson.
So what about Sims?
Oh,
Is he back now?
Last I heard, he was still
know.
going to
He's
be
still not
used
back?
in emergency situations.
So they're not going to win again this year.
There you go.
Because one of their last
But
two
they
opponents
beat-
is Georgia.
But they beat Virginia Tech by 1.
They did. They did.
Unfortunately. So, David, you got BC at 10 after that 1-point victory. Chris
Yeah,
has Miami.
They
at
won.
10.
Everybody else saying. I guess I could have put them above NC State, but
Chris, you dropped Wake Forest all the way down to 8 after we talked about it earlier, that 2-point victory for North Carolina in a shootout. The Wake Carolina game, I feel like, always lives up to the hype.
I think the last 3 Wake Carolina games have been decided by 11 total points or something like that.
but they've scored like 150 plus, both of them.
Can you imagine?
No.
David, you've got Wake at 7. Chris has Pitt at 7. What was that game?
Yeah, most of these teams like anywhere between like 5 and 9. You can kind of interchange on a weekly basis.
Yeah, all those seem interchangeable, but then the rest of the way you all are pretty much locked. NC State at 6 for Chris, Louisville at 6 for David. They lost to Clemson 31-16 over the weekend. It was a spot that I think some fans thought Clemson might lose back-to-back games, but Clemson at home.
No.
Yeah, that one. You know, you can go back and forth between UNC and Clemson at number 1. I just kept UNC there because I had them won last week and they didn't lose. So that ACC title game will be interesting. And as Will walks in front of the camera.
The graphic is up right now.
Oh, okay. So that ACC title game will be interesting. UNC
UNC could win that game.
They could. I mean,
they
they've
could.
got a better offense, and Clemson's got a better defense.
Right.
So
It'll
it's
be
gonna very
UNC's
interesting
offense
matchup.
versus Clemson's defense. Who is better?
Drake
in that
May,
game?
Heisman.
He's the best quarterback in the country right now. If you
I got a
ask me.
fourth chair question
Okay.
that would go with that. Is there a chance? This is, I guess, a question for all 3 of you because Katie loves UNC now, apparently.
I just watch a lot of their games just because I have friends from personnel there. Alex White, our former director of recruiting, who's there. I love her, so I support her when I can.
Just giving you a hard time.
They're fun to watch.
They are very fun to watch, and they score a lot of points. So if they end up going out and winning out, beating Clemson in the ACC championship, I think you still need help if like a TCU loses. But is there even a sliver of a chance that UNC is a college football playoff team?
I think a lot would have to happen. A lot would have to happen. I mean, when you think about it, this is such a bad conference. I mean, Notre Dame hammered our 2 best teams. Hammered them. And Notre Dame's 4-3 against everybody else.
Right,
I mean,
it's the
Notre
same
Dame
team
even struggled with Navy this
Went
week.
down to the wire with Navy, lost to
exactly.
Marshall.
Yeah.
I mean, they're out there beating Clemson and Carolina by 3 touchdowns and just physically dominating.
Carolina does have like the Wake Forest win, like if they were to beat Clemson, those are good wins. But the problem is, you know, if you're trying to put them up against even like a 2-loss LSU or Georgia or Alabama or Tennessee team, all of those teams have better resumes than North Carolina.
I think a team like Georgia would beat them by 40.
Yeah.
I mean, they just wouldn't be able to stop anybody in the playoffs.
So how, if the ACC is that bad, which I'm not disagreeing in any way, but how all year have they consistently had 4 to 5 top 25 teams?
Because I don't know.
So I
Someone's
think
gotta be ranked.
having top 25, having top 25 teams is different than having, like NC State was a top 25 team, but NC State had the ACC preseason player of the year,
Right.
and then lost him.
Yeah.
And the only reason that they're going to drop out now is because, if they had kept winning, I don't think they would have really moved up, but they wouldn't have dropped.
The problem with rankings is they start in the preseason, and they shouldn't.
True.
They shouldn't have any rankings till a month into the season. And the thing is, you start to realize how bad a league is, or good a league is, about halfway through the season.
Yeah.
But you're doing your rank. You should really okay, now that we know all this, maybe we should scrap all the rankings and just kind of do a restart. But they don't do that. That's why you probably shouldn't pay attention.
The
to
only
rankings
three
very
ACC
much.
teams that should probably be ranked right now are North Carolina, Clemson, and Florida State.
Right.
I mean, NC State and Syracuse have both been ranked earlier this year, and Wake Forest too, and they've all gone up and down. Wake Forest probably a little bit less.
Syracuse was ranked,
but
Was Miami ranked in the preseason?
absolutely, I'm sure they were.
The ACC is not panned out at all. It's the worst Power 5 conference, and sure, North Carolina. If North Carolina runs the table, they'll probably finish 7th or 8th, I think.
Yeah.
If you beat Clemson, but I mean, I think you'd take a 2-loss, again, a 2-loss SEC team over a 1-loss ACC champ Carolina team. There are so many other teams that would be taken over Carolina because they haven't really played anybody, and the team, they barely beat Duke.
Well, they barely beat Appalachian State.
They
and
barely beat Georgia State. Yeah.
Right. They barely beat everybody except us.
Yes. I guess what I have to say from that discussion is this would be the perfect season to implement a 12-team playoff, but unfortunately, we will have to wait several years for
It'll
that.
be entertaining.
Maybe next year, I think 2024 or the following year.
I hope.
Gio, do you have anything else before we get into basketball?
Yeah, well, actually, it's a good transition because it's about basketball.
Let's do it.
So, and this might not appeal necessarily to some of the older crowds. Sometimes they don't care. Like my dad said, he doesn't care about this stuff, but I find it interesting, and the younger crowd does. So, three things: thoughts on the new uniforms, especially the ones they wore last night, and I asked Will this question earlier. Thoughts on how the banner was. They went with the logo, the ACC Championship logo that they created when we won, rather than kind of matching the rest of the scheme up there with the ACC logo and then just saying, tournament champions in the year. So what were your guys' thoughts on that?
I mostly like the uniforms. I do think the different coloring up top and then on the one leg was a little interesting. But the thing is, we were in the crow's nest last night, and in the special section that they give to sponsors and things like that. And so we're at the very top of Castle Coliseum, so I didn't get an up-close look at our uniforms from being up there.
I liked them.
Yeah, but
They're clean.
Did you see the pictures online?
I did, but I didn't pay attention to them that closely. I'd have to see it more. I'd have to watch a whole game of us playing it before I decided.
I thought they were good.
Yeah,
I mean, they weren't bad. I think they're pretty solid uniforms. As for the banner,
The banner, I don't care about the logo. My question is why the banner's the same size as our 1996 Atlantic 10 West Division Championship logo banner. It seems like to me the ACC Championship banner should be twice as big as like the A10 Western Conference banner, and even the 19.
Custis is on staff.
That's true. There might be some sort of stupid NCAA rule that limits the size of your banners and things like that.
What's interesting is I didn't even think about it until I was getting ready to leave last night, and of course I can see it from press row because it's right there next to me. But I don't know if you're sitting in how many people in the student section can even see that.
I don't know.
Because
we couldn't see it from.
Well, of course you guys can see it from the crow's nest, but it's kind of behind the crow's nest a little bit.
Right.
So I don't know. Could they have put it in a more prominent place? Yeah, I'm surprised they went with the actual graphic.
I thought it would just be text
instead
of
of
2022 ACC
I thought it should be
champions.
like that because it would have matched the rest of them. It looks kind of weird.
Right.
Yeah.
Although I guess
there are a lot of people complaining on the boards and in my articles.
Yeah, we shouldn't complain at all. We are thrilled for this ACC
For those
championship.
watching, it's literally just this.
Yes,
pretty much
that
on a
logo.
banner.
No, I will say this. I would prefer it to be bigger, and I'd probably just put the text up there myself. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I don't care if it's like pink and purple. It's an ACC championship banner. I hope we
Yep.
hang a
Make it
bunch more
known.
of them.
And I actually did have one more, and I brain farted and let you guys go. But it appears that the suits are back for the coaching staff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
they went away from the quarter zips.
3 games in, they've worn suits, but it does not seem like it's back across the landscape of not only the ACC but college basketball. So I think this is an internal decision where Mike Young wants the staff.
I asked
to be in
Mike where he
suits.
got his suit last night. He said Roanoke.
He was looking sharp.
Some guy in
Bright
Roanoke.
blue.
Yeah. It was. I actually pointed out to you in the skybox. I was, man, look at that suit.
I think
That
he
was
said on
sharp
the
looking."
radio that Margaret, his wife,
Didn't
didn't
approve.
approve of it.
Really? Wow. I thought it was sharp.
Yeah, but
Well, he had the jacket off for the second half.
yeah.
But he wasn't very happy with the defensive performance, I bet.
I was working for the ACC network last night, and everyone in the headsets was made. When he was sitting down, he was like so frustrated about something, and he kept sitting down, and his pants were riding like all the way up to his knees. He had like rolled his suit pants up to like his knees. It was like, that is bizarre. I've never seen that before.
Now, is the women's basketball staff, they're still in quarter zips or casual
yeah,
clothes?
as far as I'm
and-
aware, they've got a game tonight against
USC Upstate.
Yeah.
So that's your fashion update for Virginia Tech sports. for the week.
Yes.
Yeah, so with that, we'll talk a little basketball before we get out of here. 2 wins for the men's team since we last talked. One coming against Lehigh and one last night against William & Mary. So as we said, the basketball team already has more wins than football. Most recently, last night, the Hokies beat William & Mary 94-77. And we had an excellent pregame meal and view from up top in the skybox. Many thanks to Jeremy Counts and Main Street Pharmacy for allowing us to watch the game up there. It was a lot of fun.
Yep, it sure was. And,
Yeah, you got a
entertaining
good
game.
view up there.
Yeah, the thing about that is you're up so high and you're almost like right on top of it because it's so steep that a lot of those 3-pointers you can tell in advance whether it's going in or not.
Yeah, a
So
really
I would
great
say
angle.
probably 3/4 of them you know.
Yeah.
when
And Tech hit 16 of them. Last
Yeah,
night.
yeah. So it was a lot. It was an entertaining game to watch. Get out to a 14-0 lead. What, like 2 or 3
Yeah,
minutes?
so
into
that
the
was
game?
3 minutes into the game, and I made a point of that because if Tech does not get out to that huge lead early, I mean, William & Mary didn't score until a 5:25 mark.
Yeah,
William & Mary started 0 for 9 from the field. If Tech doesn't get out to that big run, like Tech did not do anything later in the game to necessarily separate itself because it had that 14-point lead. I mean, there was a point in that game where the lead got down to 15 and it would have been a 1-point game. You know,
if everything goes.
yeah, but my point is just that like Tech started off hot in that first 5 minutes, and then it was kind of an even back and forth game the rest of the way.
It was. Now, I will say that when you get up by that many points, when Tech was up by 20 something,
Tech, I think biggest lead was 28.
28, you have a tendency to slack off mentally. And Mike Young is not going to continue to play this many players as many players as many minutes. Like, Basili only played 20 minutes last night. I don't think
Mike was frustrated with his defense.
correct, right? And he's been frustrated with Petit's defense as well. MJ Collins is kind of all over the place. Like, he doesn't know where to be in a lot of places. So when Virginia Tech starts playing teams that can beat them, you're going to see certain players have their minutes get cut. Yeah. And this is not going to be some big 10-man rotation like everybody thought it was going to be, or everybody wanted it to be. It's never, hardly ever like that in college basketball. It's going to the rotation's going to change. The minutes are going to maybe not be spread out, distributed quite so much as they are now. Like when Virginia Tech plays Old Dominion, and if they play Penn State, when they start getting into more competitive games, I think you're going to see Collins' minutes go down. We'll see what happens with Rodney Rice when he comes back. I mean, they're going to have to pick one of those backup centers. Like, you can't keep playing 3 centers to a certain extent.
And I think Kid's played pretty well.
He has.
But I think Mike has to evaluate the defensive aspect
Correct.
of it, because I don't think there is to a little extent. I do think like a lot of the Tech had a lot of open shots and just missed a lot. But I think this most of the guys can play offensively. That they can provide a spark. There's not much of a drop off. But defensively, there are some questions when there are certain guys on the floor together.
Correct.
Like there were times, even Basili, who's Tech starting 5, where Basili or Kidd or Poteet or whoever was in, I mean, Tech got eaten alive at times inside. So I'm very curious to see how he makes defensive adjustments, and maybe he, I think Collins a little bit looked all right defensively, but I even think there were some times where, like, guys like Sean Padula, he was like maybe 2 or 3 seconds late to closing out on a guy on a wing coming off a screen. Like, it wasn't just the starters that were good and the rest of the guys weren't. It was kind of at times lackadaisical across the board.
No, offensively, they are an absolute beautiful thing to
Machine.
watch. God, it's so good.
Multiple times extra passes.
Rothstein had a great tweet last night. He's like, the 5
You want
things
me to
I
read
love
it?
watching. Yeah, go ahead.
So John Rothstein, of course, tweeted the five things I love watching. And of course, he's got his Mike Young popping like Orville Redenbacher thing. Favorite things to watch: 1, A Few Good Men; 2, Wall Street; 3, The Godfather 1 and 2; 4, Rocky 2 through 4; 5, Virginia Tech's offense.
Yeah.
And he also tweeted, the Sean Padula breakout tour continues, now averaging 20 points per game through 3 games for Virginia Tech. So Padula's been really, really good. And I'm curious. I'm going down to Charleston this weekend. I'm curious to see when he faces some tougher competition and he doesn't necessarily get as much of a break.
Sure.
How he handles it. But he played like 35 minutes last night and had, I think, 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio.
Yeah.
So he's handled the ball really well.
He has. He's done a good job. I think it's funny. Well, not funny. I think it's great that Virginia Tech is so good offensively, and they're good offensively in women's basketball. And God, the baseball team was just a home run machine. We're so good at offense and everything, except it's like we stole all of football's mojo and just spread it amongst all the other sports.
Yeah,
David,
softball too.
Any kind of timeline at all on a Rodney Rice?
Mike was asked at the very end of his press conference if Rodney was going to be back this week, and he said no.
Yeah.
So my guess is from what I interpret, they're going to try to get him maybe some minutes for Charleston Southern on Black Friday. Which would lead into the ACC Big Ten Challenge on Monday against Minnesota, and then UNC, the ACC opener, is the following Sunday. They're going to ease him in, but I think the beginning of December is kind of where they want.
I had originally heard around the beginning of December. That's what I heard very beginning, like when he first got hurt. And it sounds like that. At first, it wasn't clear, like, is he coming back to practice then, or is he going to play then? So I guess he's already back practicing. He
was in obviously a different attire, not a true warm-up attire. He was doing some things, not a true warm-up. He was doing some physical activity on the court last night.
So, all right, now we have to temper our expectations. He's a very talented player, but these days, coaches get to start working with their players earlier than normal. So they've been working, like, practice starts in September now. It used to start in October.
but
Now it starts in September. They've been working individual drills since August. Yeah. So it's November now. So basically, he's about 3 months behind every other freshman. So in February, he's going to be at the point all the other freshmen are at now, as far as his knowledge of the system and everything. So he's way behind from a conditioning standpoint, his knowledge of the system and everything. So, like, he's not going to be able to hit the ground running. So
knowledge of the system, at least on the court.
Right. So you've got to people have to temper their expectations.
Yeah, I do think. I mean, because I asked Mike about MJ Collins on Thursday after the Lehigh game, and he essentially was like, "Look, man, I don't have anybody else to play right now."
Correct.
Tech. That's why Camden Johnson, the walk-on, is playing minutes. He played like 8 or 9 minutes against Lehigh, and that's because the only other, he's the only other wing, so to speak, Mike has outside of MJ Collins right now that isn't Darius Maddox or Hunter Couture. So I'm very curious to see how everything kind of shakes out, and like right now he's trying to play John Camden and Lynn Kidd and Malijal Poteet and Grant Basili, and how he can work in kind of the mix of everybody. I think it's going to come down to who can play the best defense.
Yep.
It certainly gives you a good idea of the depth that we have when we score 94 points and Mutz only has 2.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And Padula and Couture each had 22.
It could be anybody. Like, almost everybody they put out there is capable of scoring double figures on any given night.
Yeah.
Makes us a very, very efficient offensive team, very fun offensive team to watch.
You mentioned Sean Padula, who had a little bit of an injury scare. I think everyone held their breath when he went back into the locker room at the first half.
Yeah, it was I think it was kind of in probably around 6 minute mark, I think, in the first half. He went up for a layup and then came down and was limping, and then he media timeout, went to the locker room, came back out, he was good.
Couture was limping at one point.
But yeah, there were a couple guys.
So there was a couple times I was like, all right, just stop the game. Yeah.
That's something that we don't need is injuries to our basketball.
To the backcourt right now,
especially yeah.
With Rice already out.
Yeah.
Of course, they beat Lehigh 78-52 on Thursday. Now the Charleston Classic awaits, which tips off Thursday at 2 p.m. against ODU. We'll get into that more on Wednesday's episode, but beyond that lies a 4-game stretch with Minnesota, North Carolina, Dayton, and Oklahoma State. So we're going to learn a lot about this team in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I'm excited to get a chance to check them out in Charleston. I mean, the teams they're playing are not necessarily world beaters. Penn State is a top 35 Ken Palm team, and Furman, I think, is right around 65. I think a lot of the teams are top 100 or right about 110. Besides Old Dominion, who I think is at 180 something in Ken Palm. But these are gonna be the best teams Virginia Tech's played to this point in the season, and you're not going to be able to be lackadaisical. You're not going to have the ability to just sit back and say, all right, you're not going to be able to take a possession off, I guess is what I'm saying, defensively, right. Because I think Virginia Tech hasn't necessarily been locked in that aspect on, everybody on every single possession. I made a comment to somebody last night, Hunter Couture comes around screens, to defend faster than anybody I've ever really seen. But then there were times last night where even guys like Sean Padula are coming off the screen and they're a couple seconds behind, or the rotation looked slow a lot of times where guy drives down and 2 guys collapse instead of 1,
right,
and kick to an open man, and Tech just stands around and goes, what can we do? Yeah. So the defense is going to take a sec, but I don't know if anybody's got a better offense in the ACC than Tech.
That's true.
Before we go, Gio, is there any additional questions in the YouTube chat?
I don't know. I think we knocked it out of the park today.
Okay, well, what's coming up on Tech Sideline? Liberty Preview Wednesday. David, you'll have content from the Charleston Classic, I guess, starting Thursday night. Thursday late afternoon.
We've got, regular football week, though I'm not going to football. Jack Brizendine. Well, I don't know if I'm really going to be able to watch it because it's on ESPN Plus.
I'm not watching it.
So regular football tomorrow on Tuesday, and then Wednesday we've got practice. I will be driving down to Charleston. Tech plays at 2 p.m. on Thursday on ESPN2 against ODU. So I'll be there, and hopefully early afternoon games are the way to go. I would really appreciate that. But
so you can enjoy Charleston nightlife.
Yeah. So I'll have I'll have basketball stuff from Charleston. There's a women's basketball game tonight. Obviously they're in the Bahamas next week. Lucky Evan Hughes. Regular football week, nothing.
Yeah, there's going to be regular stuff for me.
Nothing more there.
Yep. Yeah. Just got to get it done faster so I can watch the basketball games.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, another great episode of the Tech Sideline podcast. I want to thank you for tuning in and thank everybody on set today. Will Stewart, who is in our first half, founder and general manager of Tech Sideline. He's at Will Stewart TSL on Twitter. Chris Coleman, lead analyst and columnist for Tech Sideline. He's at Chris Coleman TSL on Twitter. David Cunningham joined us for ACC Power Rankings and a little basketball talk. He's at The Real D Cunna on Twitter. I put the wrong thing in here because I put the fact that Carter was doing the fourth chair. So it is not Carter. It's Giovanni Heater in the fourth chair today. Thank you, Gio, for your points today. Carter Hill producing behind the scenes. And I'm Katie Adams signing off on episode 271 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Enjoy your week and we'll see you on Wednesday for the Liberty Preview.